going to do an overview of the steps and show you how to give you an introduction into the program. Further along we're going to go in a lot deeper and a lot more detailed. This is an overview of how we work the steps and how we understand the steps. So starting here, this little word here made it all okay for me. It's my favourite word in the whole wording of the steps. It's the word we. So we're no longer on our own. It's a we word together. There was a time I didn't really know. I was so isolated and messed up. All good step one stuff in my life was completely unmanageable, but I wasn't so sure about the powerlessness because I didn't really want to give up doing what I was doing. So step one, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and their life had become unmanageable. The principle of step one is honesty. The steps work like this. Step one will be the problem. Step two is the solution. Step three, that's a funny one. It's kind of the solution big time, or the problem big time. Step four is the problem. Step five is the solution. Step six is the problem. Step 7 is the solution. Step 8 is the problem. Step 9 is the solution. And then you have steps 10, 11, 12, which lots of us call the maintenance steps. So we go down again. Step 1. There's two parts to step 1. We're powerless over addiction. However you wish that, you can write it out, you can mind map it and see where you were powerless. If you can feel it, if you can really feel that powerlessness, you're good to go. Sometimes it takes a bit of work, and as we know, principle's honesty. What we're after here is honesty. Go into that powerlessness. What have you had to do to feed your addiction, your habit? I've done some pretty awful things, really. Stole money out of my wife's purse. It's not the worst thing I ever did. So you work at that, as I suggested, you can mind map or you can write it out. The main purpose is to try and feel that feeling. Often when I move through the steps and I can feel the feeling of the step. I can feel the unmanageability and the fearlessness, and that's powerlessness, and that's what you're after. Then we go to the second part of step 1, that our lives have become unmanageable. If you go to page 52 of the big book, the second paragraph, there's statements there that we turn into questions. Where were we having trouble with our emotional nature? Where were we full of fear? Where were we having trouble making a living? There's 9 areas. I suggest you expand the area of personal relationship into those close relationships that you have. Usually between 7 and 9. So you can do an overview where we're having trouble with our relationships, and then do the closest relationships to us. For me, when I do it, it'd be my partner and my children, etc., 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 possibly my employer. So once you've finished this work, you should be feeling pretty miserable, pretty crappy. That's good. We're having a great step 1. As we suggested, for every problem in these steps, there's a solution. And then we move into step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Principle hope. So we take the same statements, the questions that we made into questions, and pretty much set up visions of how we might be. Not what we'll have, but how we might be in these certain areas. How would it be if I'm fearless? How would it be if I had no difficulty making a living? How would it be if we were useful to those around us, others? Now, the greatest learning takes place when a person changes their point of view. So it's a complete turn it on its head, because mostly, not all, it will be the exact opposite of what you wrote down, felt in that first step. So we go through and we get to choose how we'll be. I encourage people to really push this one out. I've seen miracles happen here. Really, really, really push it out. I'm working with a couple of young women at the moment, and they're experiencing what's written in the big book as the promises, and they're walking around open mouth going, I don't think it'll get this good. I can't believe this is happening. And it's all what was written down as step 2. So be brave, push it out there. Go into your heart. How would you like your life if you could be? Then we move to step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him, however you want to work. Again, you get to choose. Principle, faith. We do some work here again in vision. You're going to hear a lot about vision. And some people use the word goals, but vision's better. How would you have it if you had a perfect relationship with your higher power, the creator, consciousness? I don't mind. Many of us have used various forms along the way. I don't think it matters that much. My experience tells me it doesn't. So how would we have this relationship? What would our higher power look like? How could we relate to our higher power? It can often be a good challenge, even for people who are quite sure they know what their higher power is and how their relationship is. I started off with a kind of Christian, messed up Catholic higher power. I was the messed up bit, I'd like to add here. Then I got very interested in Native American Great Spirit, and had the good fortune to go out there and spend a lot of time doing this work out there actually. So I got very into the Great Spirit. Then as my recovery grew, I ended up getting very interested in Buddhism, and ended up living in a monastery for a few years of my life. Now I'm probably into consciousness creation. I don't really, as we often joke with some of the guys, friends in recovery, I don't mind if I can buy it down to a radio. I just know the power, and just as long as it's not me, I got half a chance. So this brings us to the 4th step. Now, having a nice solid higher power, it's often best to make a prayer here. There are suggestions, you make your own prayer at the end of the 3rd step, so you're ready to go into the 4th step. 4th step, principle, integrity. There's 3 inventories in the 4th step that you need to take. Resentment inventory, fear inventory, and sexual inventory. it's good to have another piece of paper to write down anything that might not fit in to those 3 infantries. As suggested, the principle is integrity. We're going to get it as clean as we can get it. Write it all down. May well be carrying anger from your resentment, infantry. Fear pretty much speaks for itself. There'll be highly likely there'll be a lot of shame and guilt. It certainly was in my own case and many others I've worked with in the sexual infantry. This is the place we get it out. And then, of course, something that might not fit. Having got our infantry nicely tidied up and all ready to go, I had a cousin who left this infantry on a bus and he had to go to the bus station to collect it. He left his 4th step on the bus. They must have had fun with that in the garage. So you need to choose wisely here who to share your 4th step with. In these days, it's one of the things that may have changed since the Big Book. Most of us have sponsors, so we possibly go to our sponsor. Some of us use people of religion or spiritual people. This is a highly spiritual step. This is where you're going to start moving on now. So we think carefully, we choose this person, you're going to have a long talk. So it suggests you have plenty of tea or coffee or Coke, whatever is your tipple. And we share, as per instructions, we share our 5th step. I've had the good fortune or the honour to be part of this many times, on both sides. It's a real honour. Go through, leaving nothing out, and then often at the end, if I'm doing this step with someone, I say to them, is there anything else? More often than not there is. Have you done that? You've done the 5th step. It's a place you can also, on the 4th step, there's a place for amends. People we may owe amends to. This is where it might start coming. You might have 1 or 2 there you can see clearly. But certainly you will see your own defects. You will see your part in it. Because that's all it's about really. The other people play a part in the show, but it's about how it's affected you. Some of us addicts, it's nearly killed us holding on to this stuff. So we let it go. There's one of the bigger recommendations is that when we finish it, we go home and get quiet for an hour and see if anything else pops up. I personally find this quite useful. You should start feeling differently, a nearness of the Creator. Possibly you'll start feeling relief, the guilt and shame will start to disappear, the anger's going to start disappearing. So now, onto the 6th step. We're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. The principle of the 6th step is willingness, so we become willing. We'll show you exercises to show you how to help create willingness. That's the principle. We become willing to let go of our defects of character. Two of the main ones come up for a lot of the people I've worked with is a lot of fear. My own life is completely controlled with that by fear. And low self-worth, low self-esteem. And we kind of list them in a way, how prominent they are in our lives or how much havoc they're causing. So if fear's causing havoc all over the place, we put that at the top. If low self-worth or low self-esteem is causing it, maybe that's the second defect. Put that second to get an idea. This can be a tough step to really look at your part in this this problem. This can be tough. And I would recommend you get in and out of this step quickly. So having this nice list of all our character defects, as it's been, I've heard suggested, a person said to me that if they let all go of all their defects, there'll be nothing left. And it can look like that, because our personalities are often formed quite strongly by our defects. Humbly asking to remove our shortcomings. The principle of the seventh step is humility. How I've come to learn humility is about the truth. So, although God is a good guy and He's going to help us out here, we have to play our part. Often these two steps are lumped together, 6 and 7. No, they're quite clearly different steps. I'm sure they wouldn't have got that wrong. So they're two different steps and need different approach. We're after, by now you should have had a good chunk of what you're about, what you're really about. And we ask God's help, but my experience of this whole program is God will help out. But you have to do your bit. And you can't do your bit if you don't know what your defects are. It can be quite humbling. I would also add in here that's worthwhile. If you're struggling with a step, it's possibly the step before you haven't finished properly. Always worth checking there first. Here we suggest you make affirmations or statements of facts. The opposite. Where am I full of fear? Well, I'm courageous, faithful, strong. Where am I having difficulty with being used to others? Well, I'm not. I do service work. I try to take care of my friends and family. When we get up into the 11th step, in the mornings we set a direction for the day. You can set your direction, which can be kind and loving during the day. However it works for you. I heard a saying once: the steps are like an adjustable spanner. They'll fit any nut that shows up. That's been my experience. We're all different. Our defects, our difficulties, our addictions, they're not all the same. So the 7th step, when people work the 7th step with me, I encourage them to start working a step 10 as well. Because you can look at how you're changing, look at what's going on, look at how you react, how you respond. It's during the day and at night, take a bit of inventory. Work together these quite powerful steps. And I encourage people to stay in here for about 30 days at least. They say the cognitive change can take about 30 days, maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. But if you really work this step hard, start reading inspirational literature, you should start to really change a lot of that stuff. You'll get dissonance, that's for sure. You work these two steps together, you work them for about 30 days, longer if necessary, and then you may well find that your defects start to change. You could also find that a few men start creeping up here, because the steps work like this: 1, 2, 3, finding God; 4, 5, 6, finding ourselves; 7, 8, 9, finding our relationships; 10, 11, 12, working and finding our relationship with the wise ones. Some communities call them elders. You'll have wise ones in your life. You start to use them as soundboards. So that brings us to start looking at our step 8. The person who writes the step 8 list is going to be a very different person than started the process. A lot of change will have taken place as we've run up through. It's strongly advised, you know, when sometimes people float into recovery and I'll make amends now. Well, normally the change helps us to see where we've got it all wrong. The principle of step 8 is forgiveness. So we need to forgive ourselves. It can be very difficult. And we need to forgive others. That's how we quite often come up with a lot of names on the list. We forgive ourselves, which enables us to forgive others, which helps us put them on the amends list. Made a list of all persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. One of the really useful pieces of advice that was given to me on the way through was, don't think you're in the 9th step. You're not in the 9th step. It's a totally different step. It's light years away in a lot of respects. Just get them down on the paper. Yeah, as much as you can do. Down. Yeah. If you've been working your step 7 and 10, well, you'll be a very different person. It can be a very emotional roller coaster around this place. There's a lot of change goes on. Once the forgiveness starts biting in, you can even use it as an affirmation. I forgive myself and others. So write your list, be thorough. And don't worry about making amends. You're not in the 9th step yet. Step 8's the problem, step 9's the solution. So this is one of the places I recommend you get the help of another. It's useful to use people around the program, but spiritual people in general understand about forgiving, and they understand about the messes that we can get ourselves in. There's enough columns in the step 8 to shake it down. So you go with your list. I'll just think it's not quite step 5, but I just think it's worth running it through with someone else, because it's very easy to go see an amend that we don't need to make, or one that we do need to make. Just run it past another. See what you get. So we're going to our 9th step. Principle, justice. Well, I think we all know what that one means. Balance the scales. We're probably not as bad as we thought we were. We're probably not as good as we are. It's now to get a bit of balance, put the things that we've done wrong, right, and get on and move on. Let go, move on, get on with our lives. But to do that, we need to put the stuff we might owe. Some of us owe lots of money. Some of us have messed people around in relationships. Some of us stole loads of stuff. I've spent a long time around this program. I've never come across an amend that can't be made. I've come across people with amends they think they can't make. You can make amends to people who've gone to the other side. You can make all types of amends. the program suggests strongly that you make direct amends whenever possible, which I've always found the best way of, have a chat, get it all straightened out, because this is where you're going to get your freedom, I'm going to tell a small story here. I, as a young man, I'd spent time in Dublin and got involved in a lot of crime. Well, I thought it was a lot. I've met people who've done a lot more. That's not what it's about. And I come to this place where I needed to make amends. So at the time we had those old weird telephones that you pick up and speak. And I phoned directory inquiries and asked for a drug unit or a drug organisation, rehabilitation centre in Ireland, because I'd worked it out with my sponsor that if I was going to make a financial contribution. Anyway, gets his number, I phone it up, and the guy picks up the phone, he says, "Hello, Dublin Drug Squad?" My old habits nearly kicked in hard. And I've gone, I plucked up the courage, and I told him the situation that in my early 20s, or late teens, early 20s, a lot of crime. And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, this was just before Christmas, he said, "We have a collection at Christmas where we put a load of hampers together for the families of addicts and alcoholics, and we distribute them round to these guys at Christmas." He said, "Would that work?" And I'm like, yeah. So I sent off quite substantial for me amount of money, and it just gave me such a freedom. Many years later, I was in a meeting not far from where I live, and I was telling the story, doing a share, as you do. And I told this story, and this guy jumped in as soon as it was ready, and he said, "I know that guy." He said he's a sergeant, inspector in the Dublin drug squad, and he's 20 years in recovery. So what I'm trying to get at is here, start to expect miracles. A young gentleman that I sponsored many years ago, and I meant to make to a female, wouldn't be unique, would he? So he's sitting in the A40 in town, driving along, he's just got into his ninth step, and he sees the female on his right hand side in the car next to him. So they're in traffic, he jumps out of the car, walks round to the window, makes the amend, gets back into the car, he's never seen her since. So what we're talking about here is the promises. Expect miracles, because you will get them. So another suggestion we strongly suggest here, and it's on your 9th step, you still like working your 11th step as well, which is one of the maintenance steps. So you work these two together. One of the reasons is that as you start to clear, it leaves room for the good stuff. It's a good place to start doing spiritual practice more intensely. So we tidy up our 9th step, and then we start looking at what's commonly called maintenance steps. I hear a lot of things along the way, some of them are right, some are wrong, say the 6 steps, the forgotten step. It's not. Certainly not in our program. The 10th step, perseverance. It's now, you come so far and you've really made great progress. You should be flying. You should be experiencing the promises, what they call the promises, on page 83, 84 of the big book. It's the only part of the program I think is underwritten. I'm probably not going to change it. this is where they will start appearing. Just after you, in the middle of your ninth step, around your ninth step. So you'll be working, you're working 10 and 11 already, you start to look at service work, however you carry about that. There's more written about the 12th step than all the other steps in the AA Big Book. I think there's a reason for that. You start looking at, you know, I've got these two young ladies that I've been helping out there, you know, they're new in the program, they're out sponsoring people, taking them through the program, working it hard themselves. It's not for everybody. You will find somewhere you can practice your service work. The principle of step 12 is service. And however you might choose to that, it's good to bring in another here. You know, some have said immense skills that fit certain areas. Some of us work in the recovery field. That's what I've chose to do with a large part of my life. It's okay. It is suggested that we don't do it professionally. That, you know, I don't know. Again, that's by now you're almost grown up. You should start being able to make your own decisions. You'll have come a long, long way. So well done, you. The 12 steps, you know, I got a friend of mine, you probably know who it is, Mr. Don C, that says these steps are so important and so spiritual that when they're read out, we should stand. I kind of feel like that. The steps gave me so much. I don't know about the program, it's not how it was for me. I'm going to tell you one last story and then how I first became acquainted with the steps. I was this young boy scratching around in a Christian community after Mass in the church hall, and I opened this cupboard and I found a scroll which I now know to be, there's two scrolls which I now know to be the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I scrolled this scroll out, I was seven or eight, and I looked at the steps. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's okay. To be quite honest, I could just about read, because I was what they described at the time as a slow learner. They now describe it as dyslexia. And I read these, and I was like, wow, that's good stuff. Well, the next time I was acquainted with the steps was when I was 35 years old. It's 28 years later. And I was sitting in my second meeting of a certain fellowship. And I looked up and I saw the steps. And this is just my story. I'm quite sure it's not how it is for everybody. I thought I can do that. So within a few weeks I'd started, I was 6 months clean, so a few months, a bit better way of saying it. We started a recovery meeting with an old timer, and we didn't know enough. I wasn't even allowed to take the meeting because I didn't have enough time. And at the end of one of these meetings, a gentleman walked up to me and he said to me, "Would you like to help me run some step workshops?" Because I was really keen at the time, doing everything I could. And that gentleman taught me everything I know about the steps, really. As you heard earlier on, we started running workshops and tidying up his life's work to go out and video. I spoke to this gentleman. We were talking about Wayne Arden. I talked to this gentleman a few weeks ago and he handed the responsibility over to me and trust me to carry on the work. That's how I met one of the people who helped me along the way. And, you know, because anything we show or share or teach you guys, we don't own this. This is just information we're sharing. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot available. I'd encourage you at this spot to avail yourself to it. I've seen people many years of recovery choose to have another run at the steps or another crack at the steps and use this method, and I've seen people absolutely amazed. So much so that we starting a fellowship for anybody who's using the method, because it's different to other methods, and it does get this. It's predictable what you get out of it. It's repeatable. It's good to be around people and share experience with people that work this particular method. Every single method of working the steps, I think is great. This is only one method. It seems to be the method that I've learnt a fair bit about. But it's not the only method, and I would just encourage anyone to work steps. If you choose to work this method, then we're starting to get stuff in place. We've got our website, the workbooks on the website. We're starting to create a healing forest. And I don't really mind where it goes. It will go somewhere good. That's how I work in the 12 steps. Make it fun. It's not miserable, it's just facts.